For a long time, designing the core of an AI model, it felt like a very human thing, didn't it? Almost intuitive. We got breakthroughs like the transformer that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, the field is really pushing beyond what we can just manually figure out now. There's this real drive to automate that fundamental design step.
Absolutely. And the quest really is always ongoing optimizing for performance and efficiency. It's that quality efficiency frontier we talk about.
Right.
And often getting there means moving beyond just generic architectures. You need solutions tailored to specific tasks, specific hardware.
And that brings us perfectly to our deep dive today. We're looking at a really compelling academic paper, Star Synthesis of Tailored Architectures. It's from Liquid AI authors Armin Thomas, Ram Parnichkun, Alexander Amini, Stefano Massaroli, and Michael Poli.
Yeah, it's a great piece of work, and it tackles with core challenge head on. How do we systematically discover the best model architectures? Because current methods, whether they're human intuition or automated search, they kind of have limits in exploring the whole landscape.
Right. Like human designs, even the clever ones, often end up being variations on things we already know.
Exactly. Tweaks on existing themes.
And the automated methods, well, they promise more scope, but often struggle. They have trouble defining search spaces that are like effective and capable of finding genuinely new stuff.
That's the crux of it. The authors really nail this tension for automated search. You need a search space that's, on one hand, well conditioned, meaning the architectures you find are actually trainable, they don't just fall over.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. No point finding something you can't even train.
Precisely. But at the same time, the space needs to be comprehensive. It has to include possibilities that are radically different from what we have now. Otherwise, where's the real innovation?
Okay, so what's the big idea with Star then? What's their innovative leap?
Star brings together a couple of key things in a novel way. They've got this hierarchical search space, which is grounded in the theory of linear input varying systems.
Linear input vetting systems, LIVs, right.
LIVs, exactly. And they combine that with a specific numerical encoding. Think of it like a genetic code that's designed for evolutionary algorithms to work on. It allows for a much more principled and hopefully effective exploration.
So it's not just picking from a menu of predefined blocks. Star is more like inventing new block types and new ways to stack them. Is that fair?
That's a pretty good way to put it, actually. A huge part of the innovation is that search space built on LIVs. It gives it a really strong theoretical footing.
Okay.
And then using that star genome encoding and the evolutionary search on top, well, it's a significant step away from how things were done before.
Sounds like it could really shift how we think about architecture design. So our goal today for you listening is to really unpack the academic side of STAR. We want to focus on these core innovations and what impact they might have.
Definitely. Let's maybe start by digging a bit deeper into why current optimization is so challenging. As we said, transformers dominate, and now hybrids are big too.
Yeah, transformers scale incredibly well. We all know that. But we're also seeing this big push for hybrids to get efficiency up. It does feel like we're hitting a point where just relying on intuition for the next big architectural jump is getting harder.
That's a critical point. Manual design, driven by smart researchers, it's been amazing, but its scope is inherently limited by, well, human brain power and just the sheer time it takes to experiment. We tend to stick to patterns we know work.
Makes sense. And the automated side, neural architecture search, NAS, it's shown promise in some areas, but the paper seems to suggest it hasn't really revolutionized things across the board, especially not for the huge models like LLMs.
Yeah, the authors argue that a lot of the existing automated methods, they lack this kind of unified framework that could drive really big architectural leaps across different domains. We've seen successes, sure, like optimizing CNNs for mobile phones,
Right, specific niches.
but they haven't fundamentally changed the game the way the Transformer did.
Okay, so let's get into why. According to the paper, what are the core reasons these automated methods have been limited?
Well, a primary bottleneck they highlight is the design of that search space itself. It's a really tricky balancing act.
Okay.
Like we touched on, it needs to be well conditioned. A good chunk of the architectures it defines should actually be trainable without exploding gradients or other instabilities. Think of it like a cookbook where most recipes actually produce something edible.
Yeah, you don't want to waste tons of compute testing recipes that are guaranteed to fail.
Exactly right. But at the same time, the space has to be comprehensive. It needs to contain architectures that look really different from current ones, opening the door for actual breakthroughs. Many current methods, they operate in fairly restricted spaces.
So the challenge is make it stable enough to search effectively, but broad enough to find something genuinely new. And STAR's big idea is using these linear input varying systems to define that space.
Precisely. That's the core hypothesis. By structuring the search space around LIV principles, they believe they can hit that sweet spot, comprehensive and well-conditioned.
LIVs, okay, let's unpack that. What are linear input varying systems? How do they give a better foundation here?
Okay, so at its heart, an LIV is a linear computation like a matrix multiply, but its behavior changes based on the input it gets. It's modulated by the input.
Ah, okay.
The paper points out, actually, that standard attention mechanisms, they fit neatly into this LIV framework. So that's a good starting point to think about it. Imagine a tool that sort of adapts how it works depending on what you're using it for.
So not just a fixed calculation, but one that dynamically adapts to the input context.
Exactly. And the LIV framework then generalizes this idea way beyond just attention. What's really neat is that many successful deep learning components, different kinds of attention, linear recurrences, convolutions, gated linear units, they can all be seen as specific examples within this broader LIV framework.
Wow, okay. That provides a unifying lens then.
It really does. It's not just having a box of different tools, but understanding them all within a common mathematical structure.
That feels like a significant conceptual step.
It is, and this unified view lets them define the architecture at three different levels, hierarchically, within the LIV framework. Level 1 is featurization. That's about how the linear computation inside an LIV is shaped or modulated by the input context.
Okay, so how the input actually changes the unit's operation.
Right. Level 2 is operator structure. This defines how information gets mixed both across different positions in a sequence, like tokens,
Token mixing.
and across the different feature channels at each position.
Chasel mixing. Got it.
Is it dense mixing? Is it more structured, like a local convolution that's defined here?
And the third level.
The third level is the backbone. This describes how you actually compose these individual LIV units together. How are they connected to form the whole network? It's not just stacking them, it could be more complex connection patterns.
The paper also talks about featureizer sharing and feature group sharing. How do those fit in? They sound important for innovation too.
They're absolutely key, especially for creating architectures that are diverse but also parameter efficient. Featureizer sharing means multiple LIVs can basically use the same underlying mechanism to process features from the input.
Like sharing some initial processing steps.
Exactly. And feature group sharing is about different LIVs directly reusing sets of intermediate features that another unit already computed.
Okay, so reusing results from earlier in the computation graph.
Precisely. Both are sophisticated ways to get architectural variety while potentially cutting down on redundant parameters.
And the claim is that this whole LIV-based search space with these sharing mechanisms, it naturally ends up being both comprehensive and well-conditioned.
That's the argument, yes. And their experiments seem to back it up. They found that a good portion of architecture sampled from this space could be trained without the major instability issues you sometimes see when searching more arbitrary spaces. That trainability is a huge practical advantage for automated search.
Okay, so we have this broad, relatively stable design space from LIVs. How does STAR actually find the good architectures within it? This is where the STAR genome, that numerical encoding, comes in, right?
That's exactly right. To make automated optimization possible, you need a way to represent these complex architectures numerically. So they map those three levels, featurization, operator structure, backbone, into this hierarchical numerical code they call the STAR genome. That's really central to making the evolutionary approach work.
A numerical representation, so you're basically translating the whole blueprint into a string of numbers that an algorithm can then fiddle with.
Pretty much, yeah. The backbone genome, which is the highest level, is a sequence of segments where each segment is made of 5 numbers, and each 5-number segment defines one LIV unit in the architecture.
5 numbers per LIV. What kind of information is packed in there?
Okay, so the first number is the LIV class. It's basically an integer IB that summarizes the lower levels the specific operator and featureizer chosen for that unit. The paper lists examples like softmax attention variants, recurrences, gated convolutions, gated memoryless units, and differential versions too.
So one number points to the fundamental type of block being used.
Exactly. The second number handles featureizer sharing. It tells you if this LIV shares its featureizer weights with others. If 2 LIVs have the same number here, they're in the same sharing group. Helps with parameter count.
Makes sense. And the third number?
The third specifies the featurization sharing strategy. It dictates how the weights are shared within that group. Maybe all weights are shared, or maybe just weights related to certain feature groups within the LIV. It depends on the LIV class itself.
Add some nuance to the sharing. Okay, what about the last two numbers?
Number 4 is for feature group sharing. Similar idea to featureizer sharing, but here LIVs with the same number directly share specific feature groups, promoting reuse of computed information.
Okay.
And the fifth number is the feature group sharing strategy, defining which specific feature groups out of those available for that LIV class are being shared by the units in that group.
Wow, that's a very dense encoding. The example they give, 212111, 31112, 21221, 32112. Can you walk us through that briefly? How does that map to an architecture?
Sure. So that sequence describes a backbone with 4 LIVs. See the first number in each segment, 2, 3, 2, 3. So the first and third LIVs are class 2, the second and fourth are class 3.
Okay.
Now look at the second number, 11112. This means the first 3 LIVs share the same featureizer, group 1, but the fourth one doesn't share with them. It's in group 2, maybe by itself.
Ah, I see.
The third number is the featureizer sharing strategy, 2, 1, 2, 1. So the two class 2 LIVs use strategy 1. Then the fourth number is feature group sharing, 1, 1, 2, 1.
So the first, second, and fourth LIV share feature groups, group 1, but the third one doesn't, group 2.
Right. And the last number, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, is the strategy for that feature group sharing. It's complex, but you can see how this compact sequence holds a ton of architectural detail.
It really is like a genetic code for architectures. And you said these LIV classes, like 2 and 3, are themselves defined by lower-level genomes.
Precisely. That LIV class integer in the backbone genome, it's basically a pointer to a more detailed operator genome. That's another 5-number sequence specifying things like the exact featureizer used, the token mixing structure like dense or low rank, sparsity masks, activation function, channel mixing structure.
And the featureizer genome goes even deeper.
Yep, the featureizer genome spells out for each feature group within the LIV things like its own token channel mixing, expansion factors, repeat factors. All these details get summarized up into that high-level LIV class number in the backbone genome. It's truly hierarchical.
A multi-level code letting you optimize at different granularities. Okay, so now we have this powerful way to represent architectures numerically. How does STAR actually find the good ones? This is the STAR evolution part, using evolutionary algorithms.
Right. So with this sophisticated numerical representation, they turn to evolutionary algorithms. These are gradient-free optimization methods, kind of inspired by natural selection, to search this huge space of star genomes efficiently.
So like artificial natural selection for network architectures.
That's a good analogy, yes. The process starts with a population of star genomes, maybe random, maybe seeded with some known good ideas. Then it iterates, assess, pair, recombine, mutate.
Assessment, how do you judge the fitness of a genome?
Well, you assess it based on whatever your goal is. You actually build the network the genome describes, train it on your data, and measure its performance. That could be accuracy, perplexity for language models, maybe a mix of performance and efficiency, like model size or inference cost. The STAR framework is flexible here. It can handle multiple objectives.
Okay, then pairing, picking parents for the next generation. They mentioned tournament selection.
Yeah, tournament selection is pretty standard. You randomly pick a small group, like maybe 4 or 5 genomes from the current population. Whichever one in that little group is the fittest.
According to your assessment metric.
Exactly. That one gets chosen as a parent. You repeat that to get enough parents. It favors better genomes, but still allows some randomness.
Then recombination making offspring from the parents. They use K-point crossover.
Right. K-point crossover takes 2 parent genomes, picks a few random points along their numerical sequence, that's the K, and swaps the segments between those points. So the offspring inherits chunks of code, chunks of architectural features from both parents. Helps mix things up and explore combinations.
And finally, mutation. Just random tweaks to the code. Why is that needed?
Mutation is crucial. It introduces random changes to some numbers in a genome. This maintains diversity in the population, stops it from getting stuck in one corner of the search space, and lets it explore totally new variations that might be even better.
But hang on, with such a complex code, couldn't random mutations easily break things, create unstable or just nonsensical architectures?
That's a really sharp question. And yes, that's a risk. The authors thought about this and included something they call guiding evolution with hierarchical mutations.
Okay.
They put constraints on how mutations happen at different levels of the hierarchy. The goal is to make it more likely that the mutated genome still codes for something trainable, something potentially better. For instance, maybe you can only mutate an LIV class to another compatible class. Or if a mutation breaks a sharing strategy, the system might try to automatically fix it or revert it.
So it's not purely random chaos, it's guided randomness, trying to stay within the bounds of potentially useful architectures.
Exactly. It's trying to keep the search focused on promising areas. So you combine this structured LIV space, the hierarchical genome, and this guided evolutionary process. And that's the STAR framework for automated discovery.
Okay, makes sense. Now for the proof, the experiments. The paper goes into quite a bit of detail here. What were the key findings that really show STAR's innovation and effectiveness?
Yeah, they did extensive tests mainly on autoregressive language modeling with the Red Pajama dataset, which is smart because that's where transformers and these hand-tuned hybrids are really strong baselines.
Right, a tough comparison.
And they optimize for different things, just raw quality, perplexity, quality versus model size, and quality versus inference cache size, the KV cache.
So what were the standout results, the innovative takeaways?
Okay, one really crucial finding, their finding one, was that synthesizing architectures directly at the target full width and depth worked best. Better than optimizing smaller motifs and stacking them, or optimizing skinny models and scaling them up later.
Interesting. So go big from the start for the search itself.
Seems like it. It suggests that holistic end-to-end search at the target scale is more effective for finding genuinely optimal designs.
Okay, what else?
Finding two is maybe the most compelling evidence for STAR's innovative power. The backbones optimized just for quality. They significantly beat parameter-matched Transformer++ and striped Mamba models on a bunch of downstream benchmarks.
Better than highly optimized baselines.
Yes, and get this. The performance jump STAR achieved over those hybrids was roughly twice the jump the hybrids had previously shown over basic transformers.
Wow, that really suggests it's finding something fundamentally different and better.
Exactly. It strongly points to STAR discovering truly novel, high-performing architectures beyond current human engineering. That's a big deal for automated discovery.
Definitely. What about the efficiency, size, and cache?
Also strong results. When optimizing for quality and size, finding three, the STAR models hit comparable or even better quality than the baselines, but with significantly fewer parameters, up to 13% reduction in some cases.
Again, finding more efficient ways to get the same or better performance, that's huge for deployment.
Absolutely. And maybe even more striking was the quality and cache optimization, finding four. Here, Star backbones achieved massive KV cache reductions, up to 90% smaller cache than standard transformers,
90%.
and 36% smaller than the state-of-the-art striped hybrids. And crucially, this was while maintaining or slightly improving model quality.
That is genuinely game-changing for inference costs. Makes these big models much more practical.
It really does. That reduction in memory and compute during inference is a major innovation with real-world impact.
Did they show these benefits scale up?
They did. Finding 5 showed that a star backbone optimized for quality and cache, when scaled up to 1 billion parameters, performed as well as striped Mamba and better than Transformer++ C, while keeping its big cache size advantage. So the principles scale.
That's great news for larger models. And overall, how reliable was STAR? Did it consistently find winners?
That's finding 6. Across all these different objectives, quality size, quality cache star consistently found architectures that beat the baselines. The hit rate was really high, like 7 out of 8 or even 8 out of 8 of the top star architectures outperformed the manual designs.
So it's not just a fluke, it's a robust method.
It strongly suggests star is a reliable way to automatically find better architectures for whatever you care about performance, efficiency, or both.
These results are really impressive. They clearly show STAR innovating not just in the process, but in the outcome better, more efficient models. Did the paper give any clues about what kinds of architecture STAR was actually finding? Any recurring patterns or motifs?
Yes, and that's super interesting because it gives us hints about why these architectures work well. For instance, when optimizing for quality and size, STAR consistently favored certain types of layers, things like gated short convolutions, they call them gconv1.
Okay.
Also, specific grouped query attention variants, SA3, and differential versions of input varying recurrences, rec1diff, plus Swiggle-U activations.
So specific building blocks kept showing up for that size-quality trade-off.
Exactly. It suggests these components have an inherent efficiency or effectiveness for that particular goal. The automated process is kind of rediscovering or highlighting useful primitives.
And it wasn't just the box, but how they were used, like the sharing.
Absolutely. They saw strategic use of featurizer and feature group sharing as a key way STAR reduced parameter counts without hurting performance much. It seemed to learn where to apply sharing effectively.
Did the preferred patterns change if the goal shifted, say, to optimizing cache?
Yes, they did. When optimizing for cache size, the architectures tended to have fewer direct connections between LIVs via sharing. Interestingly, it might place cache-heavy LIVs, but then connect them cleverly using sharing to mitigate the overall footprint.
Ah, so compensating.
And they also saw more standard MLPs pop up in those cache-optimized models, suggests a different computational trade-off was being made by the evolutionary process.
It's fascinating how the algorithm adapts its design choices based on the goal. It's like it's learning implicit design rules.
That's a great way to put it. And when the goal was just pure quality, other motifs emerged, like using feature group sharing between early attention layers and later layers, a general dominance of softmax attention and memoryless units, and sparsely placed differential gated convolutions that used featurizer sharing.
Any other notable patterns?
They also saw a motif of connected gated convolutions quite often when optimizing for both high quality and small size. These recurring patterns are valuable clues about what building blocks and arrangements lead to strong performance under different pressures.
So STAR isn't just spitting out random winning lottery tickets. It seems to be a tool that could help us actually uncover more fundamental design principles for efficient and powerful networks.
I think that's a really insightful way to look at it. By analyzing what patterns consistently bubble up through this automated evolution, we might get a deeper, more data-driven grasp on why certain architectural choices work so well for specific problems and constraints.
This has been a fantastic deep dive into STAR. Just to wrap things up, could you recap the absolute key contributions and innovations from this paper?
Sure. In a nutshell, the STAR paper gives us, first, this novel hierarchical search space based on linear input varying systems. Second, the hierarchical numerical code, the STAR genome, that lets evolutionary algorithms optimize within that space.
Right.
Third, they successfully applied this whole framework to synthesize tailored architectures, showing really significant gains over strong transformer and hybrid baselines, gains in quality, size, and influence cache for language modeling.
Crucial improvements.
And fourth, it demonstrated this ability to automatically find effective, recurring architectural motifs and composition strategies, which teaches us something about good design principles. Taken together, it feels like a major step forward for automated ML and architecture search.
It really does sound like a pivotal development, moving towards a more automated, systematic, maybe ultimately more creative way to design AI models, getting past the limits of just human intuition or rigid automated methods.
Exactly. It points towards a future where we can use computation to explore a much, much wider range of possibilities, potentially finding architectures that are way more efficient, specialized, or just plain powerful than what we have now.
And on that note, here's something for you, the listener, to mull over. As these powerful automated discovery methods like STAR get even better, what does that mean for the pace and direction of AI innovation? What totally new kinds of architectures, maybe things we can't even conceive of now, might emerge down the line?
That's the big question, isn't it? The potential for truly unexpected breakthroughs is definitely there.
If you want to get into the nitty-gritty technical details, the math behind LIVs, the specifics of the evolutionary constraints, future ideas like variable depth models, we absolutely recommend checking out the original paper, STAR Synthesis of Tailored Architectures. It's packed with detail.